Hello, I'm Brian Hank, and this is a strategy video on the game Star Trek Catan. The agenda for today is to really cover two things. So first, I'm going to talk about original Catan strategies and how to modify them for Star Trek Catan. And that's usually just to take advantage of some of the support cards that you have available. The second thing I'm going to cover are general tactics, so just tips and tricks that you should keep in mind as you play Star Trek Catan. Then if you want more information, you can go to my blog, theforbiddenlimb.com, and I have a more detailed version of this analysis, and it will cover like every support card and when to use them, when to pick them up, when they're good, when they're bad, how to use them, which ones are good together, that kind of thing. So that is where you can find more. But now I'm going to just jump right into strategy. The first strategy I'll go over was known as the longest road strategy in the original Catan, and in this one it's obviously the longest supply route strategy. This is a strategy that's really good for new players because you can just focus on one thing, you can build all these starships, and it's easy to just say, I'm going to try to build the longest supply route on the board. It's very, very simple in that way. The thing is, it's not very flexible, so it's not very good for advanced players. There are better strategies that you'll want to use if you really know this game. You're going to find that it's fairly easy to get up to 5 points. You'll have your 2-point bonus, you have your original 2 outposts, you'll probably build one along the way pretty easily. You'll jump out to about 5 points quickly. Then, in order to get to 7, it's going to be a little harder. It's going to be hard to add additional outposts. It's going to be hard to build star bases if most of your resources are dilithium and tritanium. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge even to get up to 7. Then it's going to feel like a monumental challenge to get from 7 points up to 10 points. So that's why there are better strategies available. But this one will keep you in the game, and it's very easy. So that's why it's one that a new player might want to use to compete in the game. You can win with this strategy. It's just kind of hard, and there's so much luck involved in this game that if you just get the right dice rolls using this strategy, you can definitely beat anybody. If you would like to attempt this strategy, your best friend is going to be Montgomery Scott because he's going to help you build those starships very quickly, even if you don't have exactly the right resources. Another person that'll help you is Sulu. Sulu can redirect some of your starships if you put them in the wrong place, or you're trying to cut somebody off, but they build a little quicker than you expect and you're not able to do it. So you can use him whenever he's needed. And then another helpful friend will be Uhura, because she will let you get some of that dilithium and tritanium that you might not be able to get based on the dice rolls. So again, to recap, this strategy is really just for newbies, because there are better strategies out there, but it's definitely worth covering because it's possible, it's viable, and it's really easy, simple for the new players. So, next we're going to go to the largest army from the original Catan, which is actually the largest star fleet. And that revolves around getting a bunch of development cards and get a lot of those Starfleet intervenes, and of course other cards along the way. But you want to eventually put down 3 of those Starfleet intervene cards so that you can get the largest Starfleet and get those 2 points. So this is a lot better than the longest supply route strategy because it lets you control the game. You get a bunch of these development cards. You get to take advantage of the almighty Leonard McCoy support card, who is the best support card in the game, as he allows you to trade one resource for another when you're buying development cards, but then also take the top 3 cards off the development deck and just pick the one that you want. So here you'll take Leonard McCoy anytime you possibly can, and then when you have to give him up, or he's not available, then you take something that will be fairly easy to get rid of, so that on your turn, if you really want to, you can maybe use like a Janice Rand, and then pick up Leonard McCoy when he's available on your turn. Uhura is another good one. Get some of the resources that you need, and easily get rid of her if McCoy is available. This strategy is the best because it just helps you control the game. No matter what goes on, something in that development deck is going to help you out of your current situation. So even though that's the best general strategy, one that can beat it would be the trading post strategy. It's just a little bit riskier. It's one that you almost have to commit to during the initial placement. And this was called the 2-for-1 port strategy in the original Catan. With this one, you look at the initial board, you see that, oh, there is a ton of this one type of resource, or there's a whole bunch of this resource right next to its corresponding trading post or 2-for-1 port. So you put your initial settlements right on that one type of resource, and then you make your way. Your first expansion settlement would be on its corresponding trading post. Even if you do get a ton of that one resource, you're still trading 2 of it for any one. So in that way it's flexible, but it's way better to be able to use just a single one resource for everything if you can. So ideally you would have just a nice spread of each of the 5 resources, then go for this riskier strategy of finding a 2-for-1 port and just banking on that one resource and getting enough of it to make up for the fact that you have to trade it 2-for-1. We can move on to the general tactics section. So these are just some tips and tricks that you will probably want to know about. The first one is that you should be extra careful to keep your hand a secret, which is tough. You roll the dice and you get resources and everybody sees what you get, but sometimes people forget, and they forget what you do and do not have. So they might try to find this information through phishing. They might say, do you have any tritanium? And instead of saying, well, I have 1, but I don't want to trade it, you would probably want to say, I have none for trade. Or something that just doesn't tell them whether or not you have it or how many you have. And of course you want to know what other people have. You want to watch the resource distribution. When people get resources, just try to remember what people have. Especially, of course, if you have a support card that can take advantage of it. Another thing to keep in mind is that just because something is red, like tritanium, doesn't mean it's the same as brick in the original Catan, and the green dilithium is not the same as lumber in the original Catan. So here is a image of the original Catan resources and the Star Trek Catan resources and how they line up. So you can see that oxygen is the same as grain or wheat in the original Catan. But one thing that is the same is that red and green still does brick and lumber, it's just reversed in Star Trek Catan. So when you're placing your initial settlements, if you can get your second initial settlement on a red and green hex, then you can start the game with dilithium and tritanium in your hand, and you can build a starship right away, which is a pretty good advantage, especially if you're competing with a nearby opponent for an expansion settlement. Also in Star Trek Catan, when you get up to 8 or 9 points, do not try to draw development cards for that final victory point. This is important in the original Catan, but even more important in this one, because if people have been using Leonard McCoy, then there's a good chance they've grabbed all those victory points out of the development deck anyway, so there might be 1 left or maybe even none left. You just want to build starships, build another outpost, upgrade to a city, something that's more concrete than just trying to draw development cards and hope to get a victory point. Another important thing to know is that being a target, again, really bad in the original, even worse in this one, because like Christine Chapel will allow people to really target you in the final turns and rounds of the game to steal your resources, the ones that you need to get your final point or 2. So you don't want to be that target. If you can really surprise everyone by having some secret victory points in your hand or stealing a longest supply route right at the last minute, then that's going to be the best way to win this game. As for trading, you want to do it on your turn. You don't want to do it on an opponent's turn. Because if an opponent is asking you for something, they're probably about to build an outpost or a starbase or something, so you don't want to help them get there. And if it's your turn, you're probably trying to do that, and you do want to complete that. So I'm not saying never trade with your opponents on their turn, but just make sure you really, really, really need that resource, and probably you're going next. Lastly, you just want to be nice. Again, this is another thing that's really important in the original Catan, but even more important in this one, because those support cards give your opponents an opportunity to do you harm. And you don't want to encourage it if you can, so if you're nice to them, maybe they'll target somebody else. And that concludes this video. I hope you learned something that you can use in a future game of Star Trek Catan. You can also go to my blog, theforbiddenlimb.com, and get a more detailed version of this analysis, like I mentioned. Also subscribe, that would be great. Follow me on Twitter, also awesome. Or just put in the comments a game that you want me to do, and I will do my best to cover it in the near future. So until next time, I will see you later.